Thanks everybody for joining. Looking forward to the session, so I'm sure you are as well. So just a quick housekeeping session, if you wouldn't mind first, Chris, just pushing it on. So for this webinar at the moment, all attendees will be muted. We are recording the session because we will then send it out to people who are unable to attend and anybody else who would have an interest. If you wouldn't mind, during the session, please enter any questions into the chat or send it directly to myself. We're happy to go through those at the end, but just so that it flows correctly, we would prefer just to roll ahead with the webinar and then take the questions afterwards. Quick introduction, Norman Newell. I'm the sales director for Renaissance. We've been working with Parallels for quite a few years now in the various aspects of their portfolio. But I suppose the last, you guys are probably more aware of this than I am, the last months, there's been a lot of frustration within the marketplace for Citrix and VMware users and partners. There's with complex licensing, pricing increases, etc. I won't go into all the details, and you guys know better than I, because you're facing the frustrations on a daily basis. So we thought it was a good idea to put this nice webinar together, which will, hopefully show you, Parallels is the way forward. Certainly, we found that, people who have adopted it have found the licensing to be easier. The experience is better for the end users, but Chris is going to go into a little bit more of that now as we go forward. But again, thank you very much. And my pleasure to introduce Chris Marks, who's going to bring the session forward. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Norman. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, I perhaps unsurprisingly work for Parallels. I'm what's called an outbound product manager there. So I talk to partners, existing customers, and anyone that would listen to me about how to make the product better. So I take all that kind of feedback and feed that into what are called the inbound product managers, and they are the people that actually do make that product better. To give you a bit of history, just so you can see how kind of rounded the conversation is going to be. I used to work for a channel partner for about 14 years in various roles, from managed services through to being their field CTO. And that channel partner was a Citrix Platinum partner back in the day. So I've got a lot of experience of a lot of other things. I also run a few community groups as well, or help run a few community groups. So I've got an interesting inbound conversation coming in from all over the place for people who are perhaps not quite so happy with their existing solutions. So that's all good, and that's what we're going to reflect back to you today. So we're going to take a step back initially. So we're going to go, right, okay, well, what situation are customers facing? What situation are you facing? Okay. Then we're looking at Citrix specifically. So, okay, what's happened recently from a Citrix point of view to make customers perhaps doubt some future decisions? Okay, and that'll be a rounded thing. We're not poking anyone in the face here. Why customers are choosing Parallels RAS? So, what really are the key kind of fundamentals going on? I'm going to introduce you to the architecture, and you'll see that most of these products, most of these services have similar kind of architecture. So if you know, and you're an existing Citrix customer, Citrix partner, the architecture won't give you any surprises. It's a similar kind of thing. And then what's next? So where do you go from here? So after this little webinar is finished, what else can you do? What other resources can you access? So let's take a step back. So the choices faced by businesses from an infrastructure point of view, from a where I put my stuff point of view, is not necessarily easy. For every kind of choice an organization makes, there are key advantages, but there are also drawbacks, some disadvantages that would need to be overcome. And a customer will choose either one or another of these solutions for various reasons. Sometimes customers are remaining on premises even though they perhaps didn't want to remain on premises because they've got legislation they need to adhere by, and it's actually quite costly to move data out of an existing solution. Sometimes customers will go 100% full on public cloud and successfully do so, but the majority are kind of settling over here on the right-hand side. So the majority are kind of saying, well, hang on, I've got some stuff that I can kind of move into this new way of working, but I've also got some stuff that I'm keeping elsewhere. And that is borne out by the numbers. Okay. So this was a survey that Aludo, Parallels is part of an organization called Aludo, just to give you that little piece of information. So this is our survey that we did, and there's two key findings here. The one on the left is where are the people? Where are the people who are accessing resources? And as you won't be surprised to know, since COVID struck us, so since 2020, there's been a massive shift to people who are perhaps working every day of their working life in the office to perhaps not doing so much of that. So the people are now moving all over the place, and that creates all sorts of new, interesting challenges for IT, particularly around security. So I've now got an attack surface that's way, way bigger than it was before, and I need to deal with users no matter where they are in the world, from any location, any network, any device, all this kind of stuff. The graph on the right, you almost certainly will have seen lots of graphs that are similar to that with numbers that are varying, but generally, when organizations are asked, okay, where's your stuff? Most organizations are going to reply in some way that it's going to be hybrid. Okay. A lot of organizations are going full on public cloud. A lot of organizations would like to go full on public cloud. However, most organizations are not there for a whole load of reasons. Sometimes they have applications they just can't move, at least not in the time frame they want to move them. Okay, so that's the situation we're in. So where does Parallels fit with that? Well, Parallels deals with all of those customer examples. Okay, it's not just a single solution kind of product. So I'll start on the left, but we're not going to spend a lot of time with the very left-hand option. And that's Parallels Desktop. That's how most organizations recognize the brand the most. That is the market-leading product for running multiple operating systems on a device like a Mac. So I could run Linux, Windows, whatever, more versions of Mac OS on a Mac. And that has got numerous use cases, very widely used. And as I say, that's the market leader. But that's not what we're talking about in this webinar. What we're going to focus on in this webinar are the next two things. So this is what's called Parallels RAS. And it can run wholly on premises. It can run wholly in the public cloud. It can basically run wherever you want it to run. It natively also integrates with Microsoft AVD. So if I'm in a position where I'm on premises today, but I'm on the way to migrating to AVD, and there are loads of reasons why I can't go all in one go, I can actually deploy applications from both of those places and show them to a user without the user needing to know that some of these apps are coming from AVD and some of these apps are still on-prem. Parallels DAS is a completely cloud-based solution, totally re-architected. It is not Parallels RAS in the cloud. It's a completely re-architected solution to be cloud only, extremely simple to consume. You literally deploy Golden Image, choose your applications, and it goes, but we're not going to talk about that in this webinar. And then the last two things on the right-hand side, Parallel Secure Workspace in a nutshell allows you to run all of your kind of web-fronted or kind of legacy or any other application you want behind Parallel Secure Workspace without the need for a VPN. So that removes that requirement for you, and it delivers a secure front end for you. And then lastly, Parallels browser isolation. This is also new this year. This enables me to isolate a browser in the cloud so that I can consume my SaaS or web-fronted applications through a known good browser. So that means I'm not relying on the security of the user's endpoint. I can deliver that to my heart's content, knowing that the browser that's actually connecting to my SaaS apps is known and secure. But we're going to focus on RAS, okay? Let's have a little look. So, the challenges faced by Citrix customers. This is the conversation that comes to us. Now, feel free to disagree with any of these or agree with them and chuck stuff in the chat if you think any of these are wrong. This is just what's ongoing. It's probably unsurprising to know a lot of our inbound brand new customers are not brand new to the industry. They're not brand new to this end user computing or VDI space. A lot of them are existing Citrix customers, right? And they're coming to us with increased renewal costs. I'll mention perhaps why that is the case. It's easy for me to say there's increase in renewal costs, but there are reasons why that's the case. Unnecessarily bundling, what does that mean? So Citrix have solved one problem and created a different problem. So this time last year, say, if you wanted to purchase Citrix, you would access a spreadsheet of part numbers, part codes, SKUs, and you would have a fairly complicated time trying to get the right, well, the partner would have a complicated time trying to get the right SKU to the right customer. Your renewal comes in, it's then a really big old spreadsheet with lots and lots of line items, and it becomes difficult to understand that they've kind of rotated to a completely different model. So what Citrix are now doing is there's far, far fewer SKUs. There's far less choice, but consumption is much more simple. The challenge with that is that has meant they've bundled things into those products that perhaps you weren't consuming in the first place. Okay, so you have to be a little bit kind of cautious about what's going on there. Future uncertainty, I probably don't need to explain that one really. Citrix have made some decisions that a lot of customers have not been very happy about, so that's made them kind of rethink when renewal time comes. They're forced to choose long term. They have to kind of buy into a licensing method um, now for the next however many years they license. And if they change their mind, they're not able to kind of flex perhaps in the direction that they want to go in. And I'll mention a little bit more about that in a second. And ongoing admin costs really refers to the complexity of administration of the thing, right? So like I say, I come from that background. You need to have certified administrators. They need to get recertified every so often. Often, most organizations will have teams of people, and if you don't have teams of people, you're hiring external contractors. And if you don't do that, you risk not configuring your environment correctly, and that causes you availability problems or user experience problems. And it's a difficult juggling act from a cost point of view there. So let's just see. This is the simplicity that Citrix have moved to from a licensing point of view, right? So these are the kind of the four lumps of stuff. The thing is, the item on the right has really no bearing on our VDI conversation, right? That is NetScaler, and you can buy that separately. The next item on the right, the platform license, that is an invite-only license, and it is designed for very large organizations. Okay. The reason for that is that's an unlimited number of users available in that platform license. So really, most Citrix customers have got these two things to choose from. Okay. You got Citrix for private cloud, or you've got universal hybrid multi-cloud license with Citrix. Now, the tricky bit is, remember when we looked at the survey and we said most people are saying I'm operating in a hybrid world. Well, that means you can't really go for the license on the left because Citrix for private cloud means you're buying into the fact you're going to be, let's say, on-prem the entire time, and you are not going to consume services from the public cloud. Okay. If you are in the situation where you've perhaps got this hybrid scenario, so you want to consume applications on-prem and you want to consume some in the public cloud, you really don't have an option but to go for this hybrid multi-cloud license. Okay. And this is where the kind of the pricing differential comes in because customers have gone from a single solution, perhaps they got that 4 years ago. They're now getting pricing for this universal hybrid multi-cloud because they need it, because they're in this hybrid world. And the pricing is significantly different from what they were expecting. So it hasn't been budgeted for, causes lots of challenges then because it hasn't been budgeted for. I've now got a board level decision to make. and it puts the IT director or the IT manager under pressure because they're being asked obvious questions, which is why the hell didn't you budget for this? How come you don't know how much you're paying for your software? So this is really where the challenges comes in. So let's just have a look at how we solve this with Parallels RAS. Okay. So with Parallels RAS, you can run it anywhere. So I can run, if I wanted to, on premises, I can run in any private cloud solution, a co-located solution, whatever I want to do. I can run it in the public cloud, so I can run it in Azure, I can run it in AWS. I can also integrate directly with AVD. Okay. Now, from an administration point of view, I can run on all of those platforms from one console. And the magic there is once you've learned how to administrate Parallels RAS on premises, if you then move to AVD, the administration is exactly the same. So you haven't got to relearn stuff if you're deploying applications in this hybrid scenario, if you're deploying applications in these different places. It's the same admin experience. Learning curve is extremely shallow. Better TCO. Basically, you get a Parallels RAS license, you can deploy anything, anywhere. You don't have to ask us. It's entirely up to you where you're deploying that stuff. All we're concerned about is how many concurrent users are being consumed. And that cost includes 24/7 support. Almost all of the other providers in this environment do not do that. Whatever you see the cost from a Citrix renewal point of view, the support cost is going to be in addition to that. Those of you that are running a 24-hour operation, let's say you're coming from healthcare, for example, even if you get the top level of support from Citrix, they're only going to commit to 24/7 support for P1 issues. Oh, P1 or P2 if you get the very top level, but you've got normal users working at night. So therefore, they're just going to log normal level calls when they're working because that's their normal working hours. So our 24/7 support is literally that. We all support you on no matter what that support call is, 24 hours a day. Security, we've got all these security things. TLS, those of you that haven't heard of that, you've probably heard of SSL. SSL isn't really a thing anymore. It's been replaced by TLS. It's a more secure standard, and we support that throughout. We can also support FIPS 140-2 for regulated environments. If you wanted to use our built-in MFA, you can. There is no real excuse with RAS for not using multi-factor authentication. It's built into the product. What we can also do is integrate with third-party multi-factor authentication platforms as well. And we also integrate with single sign. Sorry, excuse me, with single sign-on with SAML. So we've got all the security built in there too. So from how it kind of hangs together, on the left, you've got the different methods of access. So we've got a really popular method of access is to go straight in with a HTML5 browser these days. So that's really quite a popular way to get in. We've got installs for most operating systems, so Windows, Mac, Chrome, Linux, those kind of stuff. We've also got installs for mobile OS, so Android, iOS, and iPad. We can also turn a legacy PC, say, into effectively a thin client by running Parallels RAS in kiosk mode. On the right-hand side is the stuff we gain access to. So I can gain access to a multi-session host. I can gain access to a physical PC, if that's what I want to do. A physical PC that could actually be a virtual machine, but you're treating it like a physical PC, like it's always there. I can access a VDI desktop, so I could access Windows 11, for example, remotely, and I can also access Azure Virtual Desktop, both single session and multi-session. Now, what's in the middle, what's inside Parallels RAS, that's what you're getting your licensing for your money. So the user portal is all kind of built in. We've got our own load balancing built in as well. We can, if you are a managed service provider, deliver this from a multi-tenancy point of view. So I can have multiple customers all coming into one infrastructure. As I've just said, we can connect to multiple clouds. SSO all built in. We also have unlimited monitoring and reporting available. You don't need to kind of add any licensing from a Parallels RAS point of view. The only thing you'd need to add from a monitoring reporting point of view is access to a Microsoft SQL Server because that's where it saves that data. If you are not going to use Parallels RAS monitoring and reporting, you do not need an external database. The entire thing is built in. Okay, the only reason you would need that external database is to store the data for monitoring and reporting, and all of the data is open and accessible to you. So if you wanted to query it with Power BI or whatever other querying engine you might want to use, all that data is open and available for you. And it's obviously got a single management portal there too. So what does the architecture of Parallels RAS look like? Well, we've got this high availability load balancer that's built into the product. You don't have to use it if you don't want to use it. Most of our customers who are operating in the public cloud don't use it, for example, because if I'm in, say, Microsoft Azure, I will probably be using the Azure load balancer service in there instead. That is absolutely fine. If you're on premises, you can use that load balancer and it load balances the next component here, which is a secure gateway. For those of you who are Citrix customers, that's kind of like a NetScaler gateway and a storefront kind of in one lump. So that's going to give me my web portal. That is going to give me my kind of list of applications. That's kind of the first point of entry for the user. It then talks to the brains, which is a connection broker. Again, in Citrix terms, that would be a delivery controller. So again, you can kind of see the architecture is looking similar here, right? So that then decides where the user is going to be sent. It gives that destination to the secure gateway. And from that moment on, the secure gateway encrypts the session through all the way end-to-end encryption to the user. And that comes all the way through whatever they're accessing in the back end. Now, the really cool thing is providers. So what we can do is we can add any of these hypervisors or cloud providers into Parallels RAS and seamlessly deliver them to the user. So I could have applications sitting in any one of these places, but the user does not care. The normal human who's not an IT person cares not a jot, right, for where the application is coming from or where we are as a business on our cloud migration journey, maybe. You keep the icon exactly the same to the user, but you're completely changing where the application is being delivered from. That is absolutely achievable with Parallels RAS. So I can add all of these providers, some of these providers, one, whatever, but they're all administrated in the same way from the front end point of view. And in a Parallels RAS farm, we can have multiple sites. So this allows you to do things like bursting or DR failover, or just manage 2 or 3, 4 data centers, whatever you wanted to do, just manage them separately. Or if you're a service provider, you could manage multiple customers like this, right? So I could have different customers in different sites, is entirely up to me. Or I could go full on multi-tenanted solution, which adds another layer that's not inside this diagram, okay? As you can see in this example, I've got on-prem site 1, and you might notice that site 2 is slightly different. That's using the Azure load balancer in site 2 because perhaps I've got DR or perhaps I've got AVD up there, and I'm using that as well as my on-premises resources. We integrate Azure Virtual Desktop, right? So this is native integration. And what I mean by native integration is Parallels RAS is actually using the Azure Virtual Desktop control plane to control the AVD workloads. Citrix doesn't do that. So Citrix, and I'm not saying one is better or worse, I'm just kind of educating you just to give you the differences here. Citrix doesn't actually use AVD. All Citrix want access to is multi-session Windows 11. Okay, and to get access to that, they have a special agreement with Microsoft where they replace the AVD control plane with a Citrix control plane. Okay, we do not do that. We integrate directly into the AVD control plane. Now, that's got some advantages. And one of the biggest advantages is when Microsoft improve AVD, when they actually make these improvements to this control plane, we're seeing those advantages immediately because we're integrating directly with it, right? What we're doing with AVD is we're layering over the top and we're building additional functionality, okay? So we've got hybrid cloud becomes a lot easier, right? So I've got AVD, but I've also got other things. This is now much, much easier because we're integrating directly with it. You as a customer don't really need to worry too much about how that's being done. You just consume the simplicity that's provided to you. We can deliver massive cost reduction on Azure. We've got VM optimization. We've got storage consumption. So when a VM is powered down, we change the disk type to be standard HDD, for example. When the VM is on, it's going to be premium SSD, and there's a massive difference in price from a storage point of view. That's can all be completely automated. Rapid deployment, the whole thing is a wizard. So I literally just point it at my Azure infrastructure and I can build a brand new AVD environment using the RAS console within maybe an hour and a half. And it's got enhanced user experience. So with Parallels RAS sitting on top of AVD, we do things that AVD cannot do. And why is that important to this webinar? Well, what you'll find is organizations are coming from Citrix, and a lot of them are looking at AVD, but it's not as feature rich as the solution they had before. And some of these things are simple, but some of them are really important. Drag and drop is one example, right? If my customer, or if you as a customer have got users who are used to dragging and dropping things into your Citrix desktop, when you move to AVD, you can't do it, at least not yet. What RAS is able to do is obviously layer over the top, and this is just one example, but we can retain that drag and drop functionality. We can retain universal printing, which again is not available natively in AVD just yet. And there's a whole load of other things that are available there too. So we're taking AVD, we're making it better. We're also making it match what the user is able to do on-prem. So again, real good advantages, and it's focused on that user experience, focused on, okay, well, I'm in two places. I need my user experience to be the same. You can't do that with native AVD today. The way it looks, you've got the components down there, kind of bottom left that we spoke about. We integrate directly with the AVD control plane. We deploy everything there that's top right? We can deploy to multiple host pools. We can do auto scaling. We can shut these machines down, all this kind of stuff, all from inside the Parallels RAS management console. And we can connect to everything else, so public cloud, physical PCs, all this kind of stuff. Everything's a first-class citizen with Parallels RAS. So ultimately, it gives you what we call the power of choice. Okay, I've just put a quick screenshot. That's the Mac OS client on there because I happen to be running Mac OS, right? And that's a screenshot from my client. But this could be any of the clients. Think about what a user needs to do their job, right? Some of those apps are going to be delivered, let's say, in this example with AVD. Some of those apps are perhaps going to be sitting on VMware ESX. Some of those apps might be on a hyperconverged solution like Nutanix or Scale. The user doesn't care. So if I'm, let's say, migrating away from VMware ESX into AVD, I can keep those icons exactly the same. I'm moving the application, but in Parallels RAS, all I'm doing is just changing where that application icon points to. So I'm not changing, or I'm minimizing the level of change that users are experiencing. I'm minimizing the support call. I'm making things better for the end user themselves, okay? And the really good thing is it's the same for administrators, right? If I'm publishing these applications in VMware ESX, well, if I tomorrow want to publish the same application in AVD, I do it in exactly the same way. I get exactly the same options. The learning curve is extremely shallow, right? I can now really manage this kind of hybrid way of working a lot better than I did before. So Parallels RAS is just part of the portfolio, okay? And we've kind of just seen that. So before I go on to next steps, are there any questions, Norman? Did you get any questions before I move on? If you're answering me, you're muted, Norman. I can't see.
So sorry, Chris. For some reason, it didn't want to unmute me there. No, there's nothing at the moment.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
So next steps we've got. If you want to find out more, you can go to specific pages, which is parallels.com/Citrix alternative. We also have a Parallels to RAS migration tool. Okay. Now this takes an existing Citrix build and it's kind of designed really for a POC. Okay, so it takes an existing Parallels environment and it moves those applications into Parallels RAS. You can test those out and really get up and running fast in a POC to kind of make sure it's the right decision for you. And also on YouTube, there's a thing called Tech Bites. So if you search for Parallels RAS Tech Bites, we've got little snippet videos showing you how lots of these things work technically, how we can work with MSIX app attach, how we work with GPUs, how we deliver printing, how we deliver multiple themes, how we deliver MFA, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to try and sign up for a trial, if you choose that QR code on the bottom right-hand side, you will be good to go and you can have a free trial and test it all out for yourself. In a couple of hours, you'll be up and ready. Those of you using Azure, you can also find us in the marketplace. You can deploy Parallels RAS into your Azure subscription in a couple of hours. From zero, you could have a full production environment, not just a POC. This could be production ready, production build for you in Azure, all wizard driven, and you can do that in an afternoon. And if there are no other questions, then that is my piece done. Norman, do you want to bring us home or do you want me to sign?
Yeah, no, that's fine. There is no questions at the moment that I can see. But I know that I was chatting to somebody the other day actually, and they asked me how scalable is RAS? In other words, how many users can it support? There was a government body that was asking this.
Okay, well, if I just take you back to the little architecture slide, uh, here, here. So to answer your question, we've got customers large and small, right? So we've got customers with multiple tens of thousands users. So we've got 35, 40,000 users at one end. We got customers with less than probably 20 down at the other end. So from this component point of view, the connection broker, so the brains can deal with, let's say, 5,000 users per connection broker. Okay, this is approximate. So for most organizations, you would only have enough connection brokers to deal with high availability, right? So you'd have two, probably three. Okay. The reason you'd have three connection brokers is to make sure you haven't got like a split brain scenario if one of those connection brokers fails, right? And you wouldn't really need to scale any larger than that from a connection broker if you're a normal size organization. So let's say you got 10,000 users or less. From a secure gateway point of view, that thing is brokering the live connection. Okay, so that's going to reach a limit a little bit quicker because you've got live connections coming through that. So a secure gateway is good for about 1,000 users, right? So that is the component that scales out, and that's kind of similar to how Citrix does it too, right? Um, so that secure gateway is good for 1,000 users. So let's say you had 5,000 users in your environment, you'd end up with say 6 secure gateways roughly. Obviously, it depends. Don't quote me on you need exactly 6, but to account for n+1, and you'd have your 3 connection brokers in there, and then that would deal with that. What happens when you get larger than those kind of numbers? So larger than like 5,000 users is most organizations would move to a pod architecture anyway. So you would start to have, a pod of maybe 2,500 users and then just multiply it out. And by doing that, you can effectively have an infinite number of users. So because you just replicate your pods. Equally, if you're a very small organization, you can actually run these things on the same VM. So if I'm a really small organization, you can actually, if you wanted to, normally it's not done, but you could run your secure gateway and your connection broker on the same VM. You could then have 2 VMs with 2 secure gateways, 2 connection brokers spread across those 2 VMs, and then save yourself some cost from a virtual machine point of view. So it's a very flexible architecture. It can go very small, but it can expand to very large customers too. Like I say, I've been dealing with a customer who's got about 40,000 users. We may well have big ones in that. If that
Perfect.
answers your question.
It does, it does. I'd love one of those 40,000 users, but there's not many of those in Ireland, unfortunately. Um, the other question that's come through is how does the licensing work? In other words, if there's two different environments, and the question is, would they then consume two licenses?
Okay, so let's say let's bring this other slide up to make it a little bit easier to consume. So this is a situation, right? So let's say I've got a user opening something inside AVD, and then they've separately got something open in Nutanix or something else on-prem. Okay. Now, the way Citrix deals with that is actually fairly complicated because they can't directly deal with that because your license server is on-prem. So the way Citrix deals with that, and it's why they've got this hybrid license, is they double the amount of licenses that are available to you. And they'll have some licenses on-prem and then the same number again available in the public cloud. And it's kind of like a kind of like a trust thing. With Parallels RAS, licensing is actually quite different. Licensing is all online as a licensing service, and you're licensed per concurrent user, and it does not matter where those applications are being launched from. So as long as the user is authenticated as the same person, uh, one user can use any of those applications or all of them, and they will consume one license. Yeah, there is no difference between what they do, and this helps you with a cloud migration strategy. And just to be clear, Parallels RAS is a concurrent user model. So you might have 1,000 humans, but let's say only half of them are logged in at any one time. You would only need 500 Parallels RAS licenses.
No, that's useful information, Chris. Thanks very much, and I appreciate that. And hopefully that answers the question as well. I think it does. So we don't have any more coming through at the moment. So I think we'll probably close there and say thank you very much, Chris. I found it incredibly informative, and I'm sure everybody else did. And we will distribute the recording as well after this.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.